A few years ago, I was knee-deep in my dissertation research on children's experiences living in extended families. One of the things I was interested in understanding is what effect living with an extended relative had on children's educational success. While doing background research for this project, it became apparent that there were actually very few studies that looked explicitly at the effects of living in an extended family. And when it was mentioned, it was typically in relation to a particular puzzle within the literature. A few studies had found that the negative consequences of living with a single mother were smaller for Black children compared to their white peers. And researchers had speculated that the extended family had a role to play. That is, deeper embeddedness in extended family networks helped to serve as a protective factor for African American children. While I was intrigued by the notion that the extended family could play some sort of compensatory role, I was even more struck by this puzzle that was mentioned only in passing. This was the first time that I had heard that the consequences of single motherhood varied across racial groups. And it countered everything that I had been taught to believe about the role of single motherhood in shaping outcomes within the African American community. It also stood in direct contrast to what I knew about social welfare spending in the US. You see, African Americans have the highest rates of single motherhood, and this deviation from the two-parent family is routinely indicted as a fundamental cause of their disadvantaged position in society. And our federal government actually spends hundreds of millions of dollars each year trying to promote the formation and maintenance of the two-parent family as a part of a federal strategy to reduce poverty and racial inequality and to improve child outcomes. So naturally, this elicited a lot of questions for me. How could single motherhood be less negatively impactful for Black children, and yet we devote so much time, attention, and taxpayers' dollars trying to reduce it for this group? Does the extended family truly have a role to play in explaining the differential effects of single motherhood? And why had this finding about the disparate impacts of this family form received so little broad attention? Typically, in the literature, it was discussed as an aside, as a footnote or a detour, if you will, on the path to much more important research findings. But I thought that this puzzle deserved far more attention, so I decided to take a detour of my own. I shifted the focus of my dissertation research to try to understand why the effects of this family structure, single motherhood, differed across racial groups. And I decided to test whether, as suspected, the extended family had a role to play. So using nationally representative data, I tracked thousands of Black, white, and Hispanic children from birth through young adulthood. And I tested whether living with a single mother differentially impacted their likelihood of finishing high school on time. And like other studies, indeed, I did find that the negative consequences of living in this family structure varied across racial groups. As white children spend more time living in a single mother family, their probability of finishing high school without repeating a grade declines at a much faster rate than for Black or Hispanic children. And at least for Black children, deeper embeddedness in extended family life helps to explain this. This family form helps to reduce the negative effects that are typically associated with living in a single mother family. Another important thing that I found is that while connection to the extended family matters, it isn't the most consequential factor for explaining this puzzle. That's actually socioeconomic factors. You see, due to structural racism, Black children have access to dramatically fewer resources like income, wealth, and safe neighborhoods compared to their white peers, even when they live in the same family structure. And it turns out that the additional stress that's incurred by living apart from a parent is only marginally impactful above and beyond these existing disadvantages. So this study offered some concrete answers for me for a puzzle that had actually been longstanding in the literature. We had known for over 30 years about the disparate impacts of single motherhood, even though it wasn't mentioned often. But it actually didn't fully explain the differential impact of single motherhood. But I've been so intrigued by this puzzle that years later, I'm still on the hunt for answers. And shameless plug, I'm actually writing a book about the flip side of the coin. That is when African American children live in the socially promoted two-parent family, do they reap the same rewards? Are the consequences for them the same as their white peers? And if not, why? And what should our social policy be doing about that? So if that interests you, stay tuned. My book should hit shelves in 2025.